they say with climate change that the storms will get more intense, across, the world and things, and there'll be more extreme weather conditions and stuff. Seems like we've had a little bit of that in our country lately, haven't we?
Well, yeah, we've had a lot of storms.
Some storms.
Very intense.
But while this is happening, I heard this big pow, and my power went out.
Oh no!
And so it's like, I think what happened was they closed off the road for a few days. They were one of the power lines came loose or broke. I mean, there was trees uprooted in the streets. It was pandemonium, for a couple days here after that storm. I never seen it like it here. It was just pretty intense.
Even though we are experiencing more power outages, we will need more power to improve our society.
Speaking of power, though, we did this special power on the grid. You remember that? We talked a lot about the grid and its resiliency.
The efficiency of the grid. Yeah, the efficiency and the resilience.
Or the lack thereof, maybe.
The need to upgrade the grid. Yeah, I remember all that.
So, one thing in there kind of struck me was that we looked up this data, and over the last, it was, I think, 30 years, power outages have increased eight times as much as they were 30 years ago. Well, we need power, right? There's a lot of cool things coming up in the future that we're going to need a lot of power for.
Oh yeah, of course, a lot of things. Like if we're to make strides for humanity, for manufacturing and making civilization better, we need more of this power.
We do. I mean, one small step for man here we got to have. So, yeah, power is going to be important, not just because we want to have our air conditioners work, which we do, right? But there's going to be a lot of technological advancements which have happened or are going to continue to happen that are going to improve our lives.
Many businesses such as Amazon have very large data centers. However, these centers are necessary for companies to keep improving the industry and our society.
When I was in used to live out east where there was a lot of humidity, there was Amazon was building a huge data center for their cloud storage and cloud computing and things like that they do, and they offer services for database storage and things like that. They had this this huge building full of servers, full of data storage, basically all these hard drives in there and stuff, and a lot of computing power to.
Yeah, that cloud computing doesn't come for free. We all get that cloud computing, but just imagine how much power that's taken up. Just all the servers they need for everybody just to save their files instead of saving it on their computer.
Now everybody likes to use the cloud now, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's great. That's great. I think it's wonderful. I think it's wonderful. We need these things, and it's going to be more of it, and we'll talk about that soon. But you know what? We like Amazon. I mean, Amazon's been a very revolutionary type of company that's kind of sort of set the standard for shipping and efficiencies and for ordering stuff online. I mean, they really paved the way, and we need innovation like that.
Yeah.
It comes at a cost, obviously. I mean, so this data center they built up is a huge power suck. I mean, it's just like really pulling in the power, right? Because you need to have all these transactions, all this storage that's always run electricity, and then you need to cool it down too. So a lot of power being consumed. But what Amazon provided in that was great. I mean, we've all probably used their services at some point.
Cryptocurrency data centers also require a lot of power for these transactions, but are a great method for secure income transactions.
And so now, other things that data centers use, you've heard of probably cryptocurrency stuff. I mean, that's a big
cryptocurrency.
There's that's a great invention too, and I like cryptocurrency. I'm all for it because it's a transaction that goes from person to person without the middleman. Okay, they use sophisticated blockchain algorithms to transfer and
very
store
secure
these things.
And
It's very
secure. Yeah.
It's an awesome invention. And it takes the banking fees out of it and things like that, which is kind of nice. But there's a lot of energy involved because you're talking about a huge amount of transactions all across to make it very complicated, and then repackage it back later at its recipient. And so, and then there's storage. You have to have storage along the way. You don't store these things in just like a big place, one big place. They store them all over the world, right? And so all these transactions take a lot of energy. there are centers that you know certainly are dedicated to mining Bitcoin and things like that. That's part of the storage part.
Well, they come out with different kinds of, cryptocurrencies, not just Bitcoin, but there's been other ones that have been coming up. I don't know what they are, but
Yeah. Oh yeah. There's thousands of them. Yeah. There's
Thousands of
thousands
different
of
kinds.
cryptocurrencies. That
They
come
do
and
take
go.
up a lot of energy though too, and I think they make up about half of what the data centers are, or maybe like 30-40%.
Yeah,
of
so
all the
that's-
data centers are cryptocurrency based ones.
That's a big deal. What did you say? One Bitcoin transfer. I mean,
One Bitcoin transaction is like 700 kilowatts.
Yeah. So that's. I mean, that's. Anyway.
Since these data centers in the future will only get larger, they will require a lot more power.
And the data centers themselves, I've heard, is also they're going to increase by a factor of 10. So right now they average about 100 megawatts, per data center, but that's going to go up to like around 1,000 megawatts.
Wow. Okay. So.
And so like a regular coal plant is like 400 megawatts. So
Right.
you're talking about just that data center is going to need like 2 coal plants just to run.
That's a lot of power, and so the U.S. has a lot of data centers. Okay. The 1-2% globally probably means like we're 4 or 5% here just in the U.S. of our power consumption.
I would think, yeah, probably.
So-
if it's not now, pretty soon in the future.
So I mean, but then if that goes up, say 5 to 10 times more, then you're talking about, that could be up to a significant chunk of our power.
We'll need a lot of power for these data centers that is 24/7. Nuclear can help out with that, but it still may require a lot of fossil fuel plants, which unfortunately contribute to more GHG emissions.
What are we going to do about it? We're going to need more power, right?
Yeah, we're going to need more power. I mean, we talked in some of our past videos, that we could use nuclear.
Yeah.
Nuclear power, places like that will give us more capability.
We're going to need 24/7 power though for these data centers, right?
Yeah.
And so now everybody's saying, okay, the grid right now, still the grid uses, the majority of the grid is still based on non-renewables or fossil fuels. Okay, 60% depending on where you count it and how much like that. So the more and more power gets consumed, the more and more greenhouse gases we're emitting. Okay, that's just the bottom line. If we're quadrupling, we're multiplying by 6 or 7 times the amount of power we're using just in our data centers, and it's starting to become a significant chunk of our power. That's more greenhouse gases that are eventually going to go out into the atmosphere. Okay, so that's going to cause global warming to accelerate.
In order to accommodate for more power, we will need to upgrade the grid since it is vulnerable. The power plants will need to be more distributed so that the grid is more resilient.
So how are we going to accommodate for all this power? What do you think?
If it's like 25% of our power, all of a sudden, within this decade.
Yeah, so what are we going to do?
That's amazing. What are we gonna? Yeah, what are we gonna do? You're the doctor.
Yeah.
Tell me. No, I don't know. That's a good question. We've been thinking about this a lot, but it maybe going back to our grid study and things, the grid is not becoming more and more resilient. Studies are showing that it's getting more and more vulnerable. Okay, so that's a problem. So now we got to get more power demands and a less resilient grid. That's what we're going to be inheriting here pretty soon if things are going the way they're going. And like you said, it might cost $5 trillion to fix the grid, totally for these demands. And we don't have, we're not going to spend $5 trillion on that. So one of the things we discussed before was grid efficiency, okay? And we need to have smart grids so we can turn on power as it demands, instead of having these big power plants that are far away. And you have transfer issues and long lines, transmission lines, and all that. And so that needs to become more efficient. And where they have power plants that are distributed closer in to where they're needed, and more of them. That's going to be very important. And they're going to need to have power that can be switched on and off pretty quickly, as well as the demand goes up and down. Which, some of the solar and wind can solve some of that problem, but not all of it. Okay, so we're going to need to be pretty versatile and diverse in our grid infrastructure. That's one thing I think we're going to have to really think about. And to maybe as we get more efficient and closer into the cities and places where that's used, and we have less transmission line distances to traverse, and then less vulnerabilities for it to be falling apart or wrecked by storms or things like that. So we need to think about all those things. So there's all these neat inventions coming up, AI, all these in these data centers, cryptocurrency, all of this stuff is great. And man, I can't just imagine what's going to be in front of us a decade from now even. We'll say until next time, we'll try and look at all these things that we can find out about educating the world on climate change and what would be some good ideas. All right. Well, so until next time, we'll say conserve what you can and be sensible.